Okay, I guess I'm going to have to wait till people settle down because it is important, because I'm going to explain things like how the grades work, the kind of assignments we have, things like that. So in the future, it's important that you arrive here on time, because we do take roll in this class with the iClicker, and the iClicker, the first roll will start pretty soon in the lecture. So, okay, first thing, if you want to find the course, go to Canvas. I just opened Canvas this morning when I was standing here. It's available for, and it's a little confusing because we use Canvas and we use a separate website for this course, and I'll explain why. But if you're trying to find that website I was on, go to Canvas right here. The first thing at the top takes you to the course website, and I'll explain what's on Canvas, what's on the website in a minute. The other important stuff here are things like how to contact your TA. There are no sections in this class. I'll explain that, but you do have a TA. This is how you contact your TA. Is Dina here today? Dina is not. I didn't think so. Maria, are you here today? Maria's right here. So it's very easy. You know, your TA is based on your last name. So if you're M to Z, Maria would be your TA. There's another TA who's not here today, Aisha. She is the lead TA, or the technical TA. If you have issues with your iClicker, with Canvas, with the assignments, which GauchoCast, we'll talk about this, where the documentary stream from. If you're a DSP student and you have accommodations or any sort of technical thing, the person to see regarding that is Aisha. And I'll explain this in more detail, but just so you have it. Info for crashers, if you're one of those 30 people, or 40 people, you'll want to check this out. Office hours for me, the TAs will be listing their office hours as well. Mine is from noon to 1 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, lecture day, over at Coral Tree Cafe, which is that little cafe right over yonder. If it doesn't work, email me, we'll figure something else out. And I generally stay there for like 15 minutes, and if no one shows up, I might leave. So if you're going to come after that, let me know. Okay, so if you have questions, you can email your TA, but the better way to do it is to put them here. I put at the very top of the Canvas, which is a forum that's set up. Put your questions there. You can read it over. I explain the rationale, but it's simple enough. If you put your questions there, every one of us, all the TAs and I, look at it regularly, and we can jump in with answers. Sometimes you can even jump in and help someone else with an answer. Someone doesn't know where the documentaries are, you can tell them they're in GauchoCast or whatever. But it's far better to do it this way, because it creates like a little archive of material that you don't necessarily have to wait to get an email response, which could be, a couple of days. This way you can go right in and you can see it. So we'll try to use that whenever possible. Anyhow, I'll talk about what we're using the course website, the Canvas for, but mainly you would click here, which will take you to this. This is the course website, and I'm going to explain this. So for the people standing in back, in the front here, especially in the middle, but on this side, there are seats. So please come on down and have a seat. You can't be standing or sitting in this class, because I mentioned the fire marshal gets upset. So all along here, just come on down if you're standing. Okay. So this, you can get to this by way of Canvas. You can also just put UCSB English 23, you'll find it, or my name if you put that in your browser. But let me go down first, and I'll explain the rationale for the course and all, but let me just jump down and explain the assignments, and that'll help see the relationship, I think, with this website and with Canvas. So what do you have to do for this course? Every week you have a reading. 10-week class, you have 10 readings. There is no course reader. They're all available online. You will find links to them from this website. So in terms of what you need to do the reading, and then I'll show you, you need to go onto Canvas and make a comment about the reading. You need to do one comment for the readings every week, and one comment for the documentaries every week. So it's a total of 20 comments. If you've had like English 22, the course I teach in the fall, this is different. So there are 2 sets of comments every week, not just one. Furthermore, we were doing this on YouTube, as you know, but this is a simplified way, especially for the TAs and grading, in that the comments will be on Canvas, and I'll show you that. One thing that's really important to know is the way that you're being tested on the readings is not just by way of the comments. The exams, and I'll talk about those as a midterm and a final, they will test you on the readings as well. Because sometimes people think they can be very clever and come up ways without actually doing the comment themselves, having someone else do it, using the AI to do it, aggregating, what they read and coming up with something without doing the reading. That might actually work in terms of the comment grade, but the comment grade you'll see is not very much compared to the midterm and final. That's where you really get tested on it. So also you have to come to the lectures every week, 2 lectures, obviously Tuesday and Thursday. We start at 9:30. There are a total of 20 sessions, but there are only 18 lectures. And why is that? Because we have the midterm during one session and the final exam during the final class session in here. And that's important because we don't have an exam during exam week. So if you go online, you'll see that there's a designated, session for this during exam week. We won't be using that. You must attend the lectures here in Campbell Hall. I'll show you how. So what will happen is we will take roll with the iClicker, and I'll show you that in a minute how that works. But you have to attend lecture. And why that will be frustrating for some people is what's on the center of the screen now. And that is, I am actually recording this on the podium computer, and as a backup, they're recording it from the booth so that sometime today, when I get back to my office and I have a minute, I will upload that recording to the course website, and I'll show you where that'll be and how it will work. And you'll actually be able to watch the lecture, you'll be able to read it as a PDF, and you can actually listen to it just as a podcast as well. People will get frustrated because they'll say, well, why in the world do we have to come to class when it's uploaded to the course website and it's actually uploaded to YouTube? There's really no reason to come. There is a reason, and it's not my fault, because you'll find people going online and they're going to complain about me, and they'll say, he makes you come to class even though it's not necessary. The reason is, this course is a 4-credit course at UCSB, and it is not approved to be a remote course. UCSB really didn't have remote courses until the pandemic, and now slowly, we're transitioning into it. Whereas other schools decades ago were already doing remote courses. Anyhow, because it's an in-person course, and UCSB is pretty dedicated to remaining a brick and mortar school, the accreditation for this course means you have to attend the class here. It's not accredited as a remote course, and it would flub everything up. The administration cares a lot about this. You may have other classes where people are a little easier going about it, but because this is such a large class, that building straight across the quad there is, Cheadle Hall. That's where the chancellor and all the deans live. They watch this course, so we have to. So like it or not, and to be honest, to be totally honest, if you've known me or had courses with me in the past, I'm pretty keen on doing things remotely, but the university as yet isn't doing it. So you have to come here. But the advantage of having the recorded material is that if you miss a class, well, that's too bad. You lose the attendance credit, but you can still catch up on the material. It's not like you have to ask somebody for their notes and hope that they covered everything. And it's also very useful, especially the PDFs, if you want to prepare for like the midterm, if you want to review things or check things and all. You are going to watch an additional video every week, an additional lecture. And I note here, so why are you doing the additional lectures? So Again, it has to do with accreditation. This is a 4-credit course. As you may know, for other lectures you've had, most classes have 2 lectures, like this class does, but also a section. This class doesn't have a section. Technically, UCSB calls this a flipped classroom. And what that means is I have to provide additional instruction to you by way of online material. And if I do that, and there's enough of it, and there is in this class, that makes up for not having sections. So what that means is instead of going to a section for 50 minutes a week, you have additional work that you have to do at home, and that would be like additional lectures that you have to watch. Let me just show you in practice how this all works in a day. So this is the website for the first week. And just to clarify, if you scrolled down here to week number 1 and you hit this web page, it would take you here. I have it pre-opened because if a lot of people start trying to hit this now, it'll bog down the English department websites. So week 1, The Injustice of It All, it's what it's titled. Here's your reading. You have to read Climate Equity, A Planet for the 99%. This is available online. In fact, if you were to click this link, it'll open it up here. And this is the weekly reading. It has a foreword by Greta Thunberg. And you'll read that. And then, as I note here, you'll go comment on it on the weekly Canvas reading discussion. So let me jump back to Canvas. So here we are at week 1. So I'll explain the Q&A in a minute, but here's that assignment, climate equity for the 99%. You click on that, and this will tell you about the assignment here. You can actually get a link to the assignment here, and you go down to the bottom here, and you hit reply, and you make your comment. It's as easy as that. A couple things about that, though. And let me go back to week 1. It's going to be confusing. People always get confused by it, but let me try to make it simple. You'll be making 5 comments the first half of the class for the readings, right? So there are 10 reading comments you need to make. 5 of them you make the first half of the class before the midterm. Of those 5, 2 can be your original comments. So in other words, you don't have to read what anyone else said. You read the assignment, you put your comment down, that's it. But 3 of those 5 have to be replies to someone else. So what you would need to do, it's not here yet, but when you would get down to the bottom and suddenly there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of replies over the next few days, and I'll tell you the deadline for those. You have to read those replies and you have to pick one that sounds kind of interesting and reply to it. So what's the function of that? Well, it's pretty obvious. I want you to read what other people are thinking. And in a way, this kind of takes the place of a discussion because, and there's another way that we deal with discussions here. I'll explain that in a minute. But it gets you reading what other people think, getting an idea of what other people think. And it's actually very useful because if you have the question, which people will always ask me at the beginning of a term, how long should my comment be? What should my comment be like? Well, read other people's comments. You can see some people are going to just sort of phone in the reply, just a very short, not very thoughtful comment. Other people you'll see have very thoughtful, longer comments. And you can kind of put yourself in the position of the TA that's going to be grading those. And you can say, well, what's an A? What's a B here? Because in the end, you're going to, by way of working together, decide what those grades will be. Anyhow, so that's the reading comment. Film. You can watch either the documentary Before the Flood or An Inconvenient Sequel. So why 2? Here's the overarching thinking. You may know, you may have even had the course I teach in the fall, which is English 22. I've come up with 10 videos or selected 10 videos that I think everyone should watch, that they're just the best 10 videos. And then I have 10 alternate that help with that can enhance the level of understanding that you have by way of those. So that everyone gets to see the top 10, if you take English 22 or 23, those are the ones that are the first choice. So here, that first choice would be Before the Flood. So if you've not taken English 22 in the last 4 years, watch Before the Flood. So for people who have not taken English 22, it's a simple thing. Don't worry about this either or stuff. Just watch the primary one. Easy enough. And for people that have taken English 2, no worries. It's super simple. Watch the alternate. And you may wonder a couple things here. Well, how are we going to get tested on these films if they're two different groups of documentaries? Some people are going to be watching one, some people watching the other. Don't worry, we figured it out. When you take the midterm or final, you'll hit a question like number 30, and it'll say, if you've watched Before the Flood, answer this one. If you've watched an inconvenient sequel, answer this one. And you'll answer one or the other depending on which film that you watched. And if you're thinking you could be really clever and have taken English 22 and not watch any of the second films because you've already watched the first ones, well, we have, notice the 4 years of English 22, we have the gold data for all that. So we know everyone who's taken English 22 and we know which one you should be watching. So what's the big purpose for this? Let me give you an example. There's a documentary. So one of the big issues, and I'll talk about it maybe toward the end of the class with climate, is food systems. 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions comes from food. You may know this already. You may know that eating a largely plant-based diet will reduce that dramatically, since production of beef puts a ton of methane in. It's a major, major problem. Interestingly, there's another counterpoint to that. And you may not know this, that an even bigger thing you can do with respect to food systems to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions is not eat a largely plant-based diet. The bigger thing is to waste less food. Food waste is larger than beef and all those things combined. So to do that, traditionally, I've had the primary film be something called Cowspiracy, you may have seen before, and that's about a largely plant-based diet and how it impacts the environment. Then, as an alternate, there's a film called Waste It, which is the story of food waste. I think that's the actual subtitle for it. So the idea here is if you've taken both classes, you will have looked at both aspects of this. In the case of this week, Before the Flood talks in a very general way about the climate crisis, but in a different sort of way, an inconvenient sequel does too. So anyhow, you'll watch one or the other. It's simple. If you've not taken English 22, watch the first one. If you have taken English 22, watch the second one. So after watching one of the above films, please go to Canvas. So let's just go to Canvas here for a moment. First thing, this over here in the sidebar is GauchoCast. Takes a minute to open. Every film that some of the films that we have stream, just they're out there on the internet and you don't have to pay for them or anything. But every one that isn't is here. And what you do is you can click on here and watch them. By the way, we can go back to where we were by hitting home or modules here. It'll take us either way. Let me just tell you a little something. Oh, okay. So that's how you watch the documentary. Then here, notice here we are in week 1 again. You have assignment number 1, which was to read, reading assignment number 1, which is to read the PDF I talked about. But number 2, same exact thing, go here. So you have 2 assignments, graded assignments every week, and that's where they are. By the way, this here, I have QA for lecture number 1. If you have a question right now, all you have to do is log on here and just hit reply and put your question in. I will, as I'm lecturing today, go back and check this a few times to see if anyone has any question. And I will do this during all the lectures. At least I'm going to try and see how it works. Don't worry, you won't see it because the normal lectures are going to be projected up there, and I'll be working with a different screen here with different things on it. So anyhow, that's week number 1. You do the reading, you watch the film. And this is another confusing thing, you come and watch the 2 lectures. But those lectures are also going to be uploaded to the website here. One will be the overview lecture, which is what I'm delivering right now. And the other one will be the reading for this week, which again is Climate Equity, a Planet for the 99%. So you might ask, why are these up here and what's going on? I haven't delivered the lecture. Why is that there? Those are the lectures from last year. The reason I have them up is the reason that this website exists in general, and that is I am firmly of the conviction that what goes on in academia should be available to the rest of the world, certainly with something like the climate crisis. In other words, why do I go to all the trouble to make this and just have a few people, relatively few people, 800 people watching it, when other people might really want to learn about this? And moreover, when other instructors and graduate students are putting courses together, they may want to use resources that I put together. So I make everything completely and totally public and open access. And in the last couple of years, the YouTube channels and course website have had over 1 million visits for English 22, 23, and 24. So a lot of people rely on this. And if I took these down during the lecture and just put them up as they were going, people would get upset. In fact, I did that last year for just a day. I was working on the English 22 website and I dropped the whole thing. And I got a panicked email from a graduate student in Northern Ireland who was using the class to teach and suddenly didn't have the material available. So how does this work for you? It's very simple. This says 2023, 2023. That's old. Don't read it. Don't worry about it. It'll be confusing. What will happen sometime later today, that's going to change to a 24. And when it does, it'll look like this. So remember I mentioned because you don't have section, you have to watch additional material. Well, for this week, you do. In addition to coming to these 2 lectures, please watch, read, or listen to the following lecture at a time of your choosing. This is being, like I said, recorded right now. That's what'll go up. But let me show you what that looks like, and it'll also show you what the regular lectures are going to be like throughout the term. So. So everyone has a header, so you know what it is, and then it'll break into me talking.
If you could know the truth about the threat of climate change, would you want to know? This is the question posed by National Geographic, the film Before the Flood, which features.
So this is what you're normally going to be seeing. It's actually a better format because I have real-time closed captioning. It'll run across the top of the screen, and it's just the way it'll work. And this one will be recorded like that too. If you don't want to watch it, you can also listen to it as a podcast. And by the way, if you're ever curious about how long it is, you can go into YouTube, but you can also hit it here and just see the length right here. So it's the same thing. So you might ask why I go to the trouble of doing that. Well, actually, it's not that much trouble. When I upload everything, I just upload it to YouTube and Libsyn. But there's another reason, a couple of reasons, and important reasons. Everything about this course, I've spent a lot of time working on all 3 courses, making them completely accessible. So it doesn't matter if you have good vision or if you can see it all, good hearing or you can hear it all, you can take this course. And people do all over the world who want to. And the easiest way to have just the auditory material is as a podcast. And that's environmentally important because podcasts are a fraction of the size of streaming video, even on YouTube, which has very good compression codecs and all. So it's the easy way to do it. And it also underscores something about this course that you may or may not like, and that is there are not a lot of visuals in here. So the lecture material and all, you're not going to see a lot of visuals. It's going to be a lot of text, and I want to be reading it all. So when something pops up on screen, I'm going to sit and read through that. And you might say, from your point of view in the classroom, that doesn't make any sense. But it makes an enormous amount of sense if someone, can't read the material. I started addressing a slide again and again and again, and someone can't see it very well or see it at all, that takes care of that. But it also benefits everyone, I think. And I think that's one thing we don't think about things like the American Disability Act, that everyone it sometimes will benefit. So personal anecdote. You'll hear again and again, I have an 8-year-old daughter, so I talk about her constantly. And when she was young, when I was pushing her around in a stroller, I never really thought about when you go like to a supermarket or someplace, any place, that there are ramps there. And I always thought, well, those are for, people with some sort of disability. But if you're actually trying to take a stroller up like a flight of stairs while also carrying groceries, those ramps become enormously helpful. So they benefit everyone, I think. And this benefits everyone too, because if you don't have the time to sit and watch this, if you're, going somewhere or you're out for a walk or a jog, just listen to it, and it's very easy. And also, if vision is an issue, it's a lot easier to go through because I'm going to sequentially put these up on Libsyn without anything in between. So it'll just be a playlist. You just keep click the next one, click the next one, click the next one. All that being said, so you can watch this material on YouTube or you can listen to it. You can also download it as a PDF. And let me see if this will open for us. This is it. This is the PDF of the lectures. This part that's not indented is what you will see on the slide itself. Then below it, you're going to see my comment. So virtually everything coming out of my mouth is going to be in this PDF. So that's why if you don't want to watch it or listen, you could just use the PDF. We formatted the PDF with a lot of white space on here. So if you want to make notes with it, if you're doing it old school, you could just print it out and write up. Or if you're using, a PDF editing software, there's room for that on there too. But let me show you something about each one of these lectures. It starts off with me doing a general overview, and this one is Before the Flood and an Inconvenient Sequel, and I will talk about both documentaries in there. But then, class discussion of Before the Flood and an Inconvenient Sequel. So what's this all about? During my weekly lectures, when I talk about on Tuesdays the reading, on Thursdays the documentary, I will give an overview to begin with, but then I will be responding to your comments or comments made by students. So those comments that are going up in Canvas, even though there are, many, hundreds of comments and all, I read them all. And what I will do is pick out comments that are particularly useful. And in fact, I've done that in the past too. So for this one, I have past comments because it's the first week and I'm not sure you're going to have your comments all done in time. And all of them, I will have some particularly good comments from the past. So how that will work is during the lecture, I will show up on the, what'll show up on the screen is a comment that someone made. So in this case, on the first day of class, Ken stated that the first few weeks of the class are undeniably depressing, and this could not have been any more true. After watching the film Before the Flood, shock and fear have cemented due to visuals and documentary provided on the devastation already happening. And the person goes on into the comment. Then I comment on it here. So why am I taking this approach? Well, the idea here is to try to get kind of a discussion going. So, and maybe even a better way of putting it is, do you really want to just listen to what I think the whole time? You'll get a lot of that in this class. But you also get to hear what other people in the class are thinking, your perspective on it. And from my point of view, it's a large class, 860 people, but I try as much as I can to make it have the benefits of a small class. So in a typical small class, this is the way it works. First, I come in and I frame the material. I talk for a few minutes, 10, 20 minutes. Then I open it up for discussion. People make comments. Sometimes I respond to the comment. Sometimes other people respond to the comment. And that's how the class goes. This is like that. One, people make a comment. 3 of your 5 comments, the first half, remember, are you replying to other people? So it's just like someone over in the room says something and then you say, that's what I think about it. And then I jump in with it as well. I think it's a better way of doing it. I think it's more active and more involving you, even though you're all just listening to me broadcast right now. But on the other hand, it's great because people decide what we're going to talk about. And often there are things that I want to bring up that I get to talk about with a comment. You know, someone will say, this bothered me for this reason, and I'll say, let me tell you about that. But beyond that, I mean, this is a volatile, active issue right now, the climate crisis. It's there. It's engaged you in a way that isn't the case with other things. So I also teach literature. I teach Renaissance literature. If I were teaching something like, you know, Shakespeare, you probably all haven't thought much about Shakespeare recently. You don't really have a lot of thoughts about it. You come in, you want to hear me talk about it. I'm presumably the expert and all. The climate crisis isn't like that. You're all probably thinking about it. We know from polls that people of your age probably are thinking about the climate crisis every day. I mean, most of you are. And you have questions, you have comments, and that's what this class will be partly based on. You may not like that. I've had people in the class tell me that they don't want to hear what other people have to say. They came here to hear what the professor says. Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that more. And moreover, in smaller classes, it's not the case. Because if that were true, in smaller classes, no one would ever talk, and the professor would just do what I'm doing, droning on and on. So that's how the lectures will be. Again, the big takeaway here is don't look at anything that says 2023 or doesn't have a date. So I haven't, you know, the course, this is the 4th year that I've taught it, but it's developing all the time. So if you get into like week 3, 4, and 8 and all, don't go looking at those now because they're still evolving. I do note for this week, if you haven't seen it already, and if you get Netflix, Leonardo DiCaprio, who is the host of the documentary Before the Flood, also has a more recent film. And actually, I would have assigned this film. I think it's that good. It's, if you haven't seen it, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence star in it, and they both do a terrific job. The problem is the only way I can put things up on GauchoCast is if I can get a DVD of it, and then the university has it figured out where that's okay to upload it as long as it's behind a password, which Canvas is. But Netflix now doesn't produce DVDs of their own content. You may have realized this. And the reason is because they want you to subscribe to Netflix to watch anything that Netflix makes. They all do it now. Apple does it all as well. So this is only available on Netflix, but you may get Netflix and you may want to see it. Okay, so that's the course films, course documentaries, and course lectures. Now, assessment. That's another way of saying grading. How does grading work? You can read that for a second. Attendance is worth 20% of the course grade. Attendance will be taken by way of the iClicker app. Just to be clear, I'm not taking official attendance today, but why don't we see how that works? How it works is I will go here, and once I click this, what will happen is if you're going through the lecture, a slide will pop up, and it's going to be a question that I want to hear what you think about, and I will initiate a poll like I'm doing here. And I hit select. And now, if you happen to have iClicker software, you could test it right now. 5 people, 13 people have. And what will happen is at the end, because it's a question you might want to know the answer to. So one of the questions I asked very early on is, how anxious are you made by the climate crisis? Do you worry about it a lot? You don't care about it at all? You may want to know what people think. And I can click here and it will tell me the results. Right now you can click anything, it doesn't matter, because we're not taking roll today. Yeah. Ken Hiltner. It should be, or it could be the course. So the question is, the course is finding it, and it seems like it's under the TA's name, which is Aisha Anwar, and it should be English. So the main thing, so did folks find it by looking for English 23? Is that how you found it? So look for English 23. The TA, that's the lead TA who does all the technical things, Aisha Anwar did it. If you have problems with your iClicker, at any time, Aisha is the person who you want to see. And Aisha will normally be here, but she had a family issue. She wasn't able to make it today. But a couple things to note about this, and that is the iClicker. The iClicker, you have to register your iClicker software. So even though if you've done everything there, you found English 23, you just made a a poll, that it has to be registered to Canvas, because otherwise the iClicker data from your phone will not get transferred over to Canvas. And that's important because that's where your grade resides. Let me tell you a couple things. I actually have more about that, and I'll scroll down. You have to do this. You don't have to do it today, but every class other than the midterm or final, you have to do it. Just in case you're thinking, the iClicker software uses the GPS of your phone, and the notion is it creates a geofence around the lecture hall. Why does that matter? Because you might think, well, I won't come to class and I'll have a friend text me. He's taking a poll now, and I'll pull my phone out while I'm lying in bed and I will do attendance. The system is designed to not let that work because your GPS data will not show that you're in the lecture hall. Attendance will be taken at random intervals. Again, you'll see slides that pop up. There'll be 3 of them in the course of the lecture. You have to answer 2 of them. And that's me being really easygoing. It has a downside, I realize that. So so the people who weren't able to get here, right on time, I assume you're rushing to get here. No worries if you came here a couple minutes late. You only have to get 2 of the 3. The problem with that is, and it's very frustrating because I do it to be kind of easygoing and nice, soon as that second slide is up, and before even the software has closed it down, people get up and leave because they feel they know that they just have to get 2 of the 3. iClicker software shows they got 2 of the 3. But please do stay. I mean, it's rude to everyone to be getting up and doing that. And I've given it a lot of thought. If it does happen a lot, if we have people doing it, I'll just go back to requiring all 3. And that does make it tougher for you. In any event, one thing you want to do, and please do this, is to go to Canvas after every class, not the same day, like a day or 2 after. So we're going to take the first roll on Thursday. Check it like over the weekend. Make sure that your attendance data is in Canvas. And the reason is, if for some reason, when you sync the 2 up, your data is not being transferred, that presents a problem. And, I note here, it happens every term. People come to us at the very end of the term and they say, I don't know what's going on. I'm supposed to get, all the points for Canvas, and I'm only getting, 12 points, but I have attended everything. Well, we don't know that you've attended everything, and there's no way to prove that other than if it goes into Canvas. So you have to do it. If you do that at the end of the term, I can tell you right now, we will not give you those attendance points. Just because you said you came to every class, if Canvas doesn't show you coming to every class, you won't get those points. But if you check it every class a day or so after, you'll see if there's a problem. If there is a problem, if maybe it's a glitch in your software or whatever, then your TA will be lenient, and if it happens once, we'll work it out. But if you don't do this, there's no way of us coordinating that. And regarding that, sometimes there can be problems in this room with Wi-Fi. They've worked it out, like the beginning of last year, I think it was. They put all new access points on, and it should have great Wi-Fi for that. If for some reason you're trying to do the poll and you're on your app and it's not working, my suggestion is switch to cellular. But the first thing to do, and it's another glitch in the system, that if you cannot get on to the Wi-Fi here, the way to do it is to go into your preferences, into settings of your phone or device that you're using, and forget that Wi-Fi. So whatever you're using, whichever UCSB access you're using, forget it and then re-log in again, because sometimes you can get dropped out that way. But as a last resort, try using cellular data. But don't use cellular data first, because if everyone in this room tries to hit whatever you have, Verizon or T-Mobile, you will override that system. There'll be too many people trying to get access to it, and then we will have problems. Try to use the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi shouldn't work. But if you have a problem and you know you have a problem, you were sitting there, you're trying to get on with your app on your phone, it wasn't working, no worries, see your TA before you leave. Maria and Dina will be here, and they will make a list of everybody that's here that wasn't able to get on. That's the way to do it, because if you leave here and then you email the next day and say, oh, by the way, my app wasn't working, the TA can't really give you credit for that because we don't know that you were here or not. But if you physically see your TA, they will make a list and you're good. That's the way to do it. And to put, good. No, they're using the Wi-Fi, you won't. So just to clarify, attendance is 20% of the grade. And I can tell you right away, it's the easiest 20% of the grade, because it's basically like 1% of the, it's actually more than 1%. Well, it's 1% whenever you come to class. And you might think it's not a big deal to miss 3 or 4, but I can tell you every term people come to me with things like, they have an 89, would I please move them up to a 90 so they get not a B plus, but an A minus? And my answer is always no, because we can't do it for one person, we'd have to do it for everyone. But that 1 point could have come from your attendance. It's very easy. It's the easiest part of the grade to get. And comments are also worth 20% of the total course grade. So I said this before, but just to make it clear, you will be making a total of 10 Canvas comments on the course readings, which constitute 10% of the course grade. And you'll be making a total of 10 Canvas comments on the course documentaries, also 10% of the grade. Therefore, you're going to be making a total of 20 comments, and each comment is worth 1% of the course grade. I can tell you right now, if you make thoughtful comments, if you're not just sort of phoning them in, or you're not trying to copy someone else's or whatever, if you make thoughtful, good comments, you'll get full credit from your TA. And that then gives you 20 more easy grade points. So if you think about this, out of 100 points, just doing the weekly comments in a thoughtful way, coming to class, you will get a perfect 40% so far on the class. Why this matters, you may have heard, the exams in this course can be pretty difficult. Not incredibly difficult. On every exam we have sometimes many dozen of people who actually get A+ or get everything correct, but they can be a little more difficult. But you hedge your bet by making sure you have good attendance and good comments, because you might, literally the way this math works out, you might have like an 85% if you average both the midterm and final, which is a B. But if you have perfect attendance, perfect comment grade, that will boost you up to an A-. So it's really important to do it. And also a good reason not to freak out over the exams if you didn't do as well as you want. I make explicit here that 6 of your first 10 comments, that would be 3 of the first film comments, 3 of the first reading comments, should be replies. I do this in red because people get confused by it sometimes. So let me just see, because I know people have been asking questions out loud, but so people are starting with questions. Good. So, and you could do it as well. Do you recommend that we read the posted articles and readings before the lecture? Yeah, that's always a good question. So the question is, you have to do a reading every week and watch a documentary every week. When should you do it? Should you do it before the lecture or after the lecture, since the Tuesday lecture is going to be on the reading, Thursday lecture is on the documentaries? It's up to you. You might find that if you do the reading first, then watching the lecture and seeing people's comments on it and all will enhance what you already know or make you think about it in another way. sometimes the readings might seem kind of obtuse and you're not even quite sure why we're doing it, in which case watching the documentary, watching the lecture, seeing what other people have thought would be a good way of preparing to do the reading. It's really up to you. And I recommend you try to do that either way. Assignments 3 and 4. Okay, that's already people are jumping ahead. 1 and 2. So I'll get to the assignments, but the thing is, what you have to do with your comments is, so this is week 1, right? And you had to watch that documentary either before the flood or an inconvenient sequel, and you had to do that reading on climate justice. You have to do the reading, and this actually applies to the first question. You have to do the reading this week because your comment needs to be done for this week by midnight Sunday. You have to go into Canvas and make your comment by midnight Sunday. If you do not, Canvas will close. You will not be able to make your comment. You will lose the 1% of that course grade if you don't do it. So you have to do it that way. This could be right. I'll have to check that. So comments, I know assignments 1 and 2 have that date, but I believe from what this person is saying, the date's not correct yet for 3 and 4. So we'll check that. But don't worry, you shouldn't be doing 3 and 4 because that's for next week. So just to clarify, we're asked to write 5 different comments on each reading, 3 of which should be replies to other students. So this is for the first half of the class, which this person is talking about. You have 5 comments to do on the readings and 5 to do on the documentaries, a total of 10 total. Of the readings, 3 of the reading ones should be replies. Of the documentaries, 3 should be replies. 3 and 3 is 6. That's why it's a little confusing here. So, oh, and isn't this nice? Someone actually came in and commented about this to clarify, and someone actually responded. That's the way that normal, that big Q&A we have will function. Will there be 2 films and 2 readings per week or only 1? Just 1. There'll be 2 film options, but you only have to watch 1 and only 1 reading. Just to clarify, sometimes maybe there'll be like 2 little readings and all, but for the most part, it's just 1. The honor section, I'll explain in a little bit. Can I use the iClicker website rather than the app on your phone? Yes, you can do that. As far as I know, you can access it by way of a browser if you have your laptop open. Where on Canvas can you find your attendance? That's a good question. Aisha will answer that. I'm not quite sure. But let's go back to the syllabus here. Midterm and final exams. Midterm will be here during a regular class period, Thursday, February 8th. Final exam will be during a regular class period, Thursday, March 14th. Please save the date, especially that last one. People sometimes want to leave campus early at the end of a term, and this class is good for that because you don't have to stay for exam week, but you do have to stay for that date. Also, the midterm will cover just the first 5 weeks of the class. That's the first 10 lectures, first 5 readings, first 5 films. The second half, the final exam, will not be cumulative. It'll just cover the second half. So common details here. Each exam is worth 30% of the course grade. So you can see this is not as big. I mean, attendance and comments are almost that big. But the exams are 60% of the grade. And as I mentioned, the other 40% is attendance and comments. Each exam, they're both the same, will have 60 multiple choice questions. These will be done with bubble sheets. Scantron was sort of the older thing we used on campus, but now we use something called Gradescope. I will go over it when we get closer to the exam. You don't have to do anything but bring a number 2 pencil, and we will pass out the bubble sheets, and that's it. So if you think about it, if each exam is worth 30% of the grade, there's 60 questions. Each question is worth half the grade. All going to be multiple choice. All generally have 5, sometimes 4 possibilities. It will be during the class period, so it'll just be 70 minutes long. So if you think about it, you have a little over a minute each to do the questions. The nice thing about it is it's paper-based, and as a consequence, if you aren't sure about when, you can come back to it. And it's not like some online software which we used during the pandemic. It would be longer for you, perhaps, if you have DSP accommodations. That's the Disabled Students Program. You should, contact them if you do, in which place there will be a separate exam set up, proctored separately with different arrangements for whatever you need, for example, different times. They will be paper-based. It will not be open book. Yeah, in order to discourage academic dishonesty, there are going to be 4 separate versions of the exam. So when we pass them out, the exam that you get will be different than the exam your person next to you gets, which will be different again, since there'll be 4 different versions. Why? It will discourage you from looking over at your neighbors and copying them. In addition to the readings and lectures, there will be questions on the films. You have questions on all of them. Not allowed to talk to anyone during the exam. You're not allowed to use any devices. Yes, academic dishonesty, answer sharing on the exams. I don't know why, but ever since the pandemic, there's been an uptick on academic dishonesty. And in this class, these classes in particular, and it's happening every term now. But let me explain how this works. And if you want to try, go ahead, but this is not the class to try to do it in. First, from where I am right now, I can see everyone in the room really well. You may not be able to see other people. If you're sitting over here, you're going to say, well, how can you see someone over there? I can see everyone. During the exam, I will be walking around, sometimes up here. There'll be a TA there and a TA there. They will be looking to see if they see 2 people who are apparently sharing answers, looking your back. What they will do is very quietly, and I will be coming around talking to them, they will identify those 2 people and they will ask someone else, me or another TA, to corroborate that it seems that those 2 people are sharing answers. Then what happens, and you will not be aware of this happening, is when you hand in your exam, the TA will take it and set it aside, and when the other person or persons that we believe you may have been sharing answers with turn in theirs, we will set that with it. Then we will compare the answers. If you think about it, there are 60 questions, and if you want to do the math, you'll see why this very quickly corroborates if there was answer sharing. If, let's just say, 5 wrong answers are the same on both exams, what is it, and given that there are 5 answers, possibilities for each, what is the chance, that 2 people would have the exact same 5 questions with the exact one of the 5 answers incorrect? Statistically, it becomes very improbable. So what happens then is I will immediately, even if it's just suspected by the TAs, and again, that's why this class is not too good to do it in. So say you had like an essay question or something. Well, if you looked over on your neighbor and you saw some names that you forgot and got the basic, gist of the idea, and then you wrote out your own essay using material from the other person, that'd be really hard to prove, But here, it's all gets done with software. It's very easy, and an actual coefficient will come as what is the likelihood of you having shared answers. So what happens? I will immediately fail you for the course, full stop. Anyone involved in it. But that may well be the least of your problems, because I am obligated to return every case into the Office of Student Conduct, and they have their own set of sanctions separate and apart from me. I have nothing to do with, and they are the ones who may issue a hearing, initiate the process of a hearing, in which case you can either defend yourself or get an attorney. They can give you a warning, they can give you disciplinary probation, you can lose privileges, exclusion from activities, suspension for a term or more, and ultimately dismissal. So please don't do that. Please don't do it. Not only is it a big hassle for me, but I can tell you it is heart-wrenching when this happens for folks. Often, I teach these courses at lower division. There are a lot of freshmen and sophomores. People come to campus. Suddenly, they have this happen. They become very distraught over it. I get multiple emails. I, in some cases, have to, then I feel obligated to report it to CAP, which is the UCSB Office of Counseling and Psychological Services. And then they will follow up with the person to see just how well they are after this. It's not nice. It's not good. So please don't do it. If you have questions, again, the place to put them here is at the top of the course website. This one is the one that will be active all the time. So that's the first stop. I explained this in detail. You will want to look over the syllabus to see all this. So how do you enroll in the honor section? So first off, like many large lectures, there is an honor section for this class. Unfortunately, because this class is so large, the honor section is proportionately tiny. So there are 15 spots in the honor section. The honor section takes place after this class on Thursdays from 11 to 11:50 over at the new Interactive Learning Pavilion. If you want to get in, email me before midnight tomorrow night, January 10th, explaining why you want to join the honors section. I'm not going to say any more than that because I want people to, because I'm going to receive presumably more than 15 of these, and I will have to go through them and make my decision based on what you tell me. So if you really want to get in, you should think about why you want to get in and email me. And don't forget, you don't have a whole lot of time. And then what will happen, just to be clear, if you're hoping to get in, the following morning, which will be, Thursday morning before the next lecture, I will send out access codes to everyone who got in. If you do not receive an access code before lecture on Thursday, unfortunately, I wasn't able to let you in. Every term, especially at the end of the term, people come and ask us if you can get extra credit for the course. Those are usually the people who have like an 89 and want to try to get an A- somehow. And the answer is no, unfortunately. There are just too many people, 860 people in the room to keep track of the extra credit. So yeah. Material, it's located in Canvas and also on the course website. And again, why I do it, because as I note here, knowledge should be free and accessible to everyone. You don't have to put something in the course Q&A. Personal questions, just contact your TA. I told you why we watch the same documentaries in English 22 and 23, if you want to look it over more. And why online comments? Because, pedagogically, it encourages sort of, online discussion. But a downside is inappropriate comments. And I note here that, there is a, sort of a culture of anonymity on the internet, places like Reddit, where people act in very unpleasant ways sometimes. So try to be nice and try to be pleasant, not only as thoughtful with your comments, but respectful as well. And if you do encounter any sort of comment, like if someone responds to you and the comment in any way is disturbing, I mean, obviously with hate speech and threatening language or anything like that, but in any way disturbing, and if you read anything in the comment, you should definitely email me or your TA immediately. Yeah, this is I have to put this in because people think this, hey, maybe you could skip watching the documentaries and even doing the readings because you could get someone else, something else to do the comment for you. You could either ask someone else to write the comment, maybe you could get someone else to do it, I don't know. Now you have GPT-3 could actually come up with the comment for you. Or what people do, and it's very obvious they do, and I see it every term, is they will read like 5 or 10 comments and they will see what other people are thinking. And then it's not obvious plagiarism, they're not copying exactly, but if people are saying, I didn't like the way that Leonardo DiCaprio, his attitude seemed, sort of denigrating to everyone else, they will say, I didn't like it because, the host really seemed to put people down. And they'll think, well, this is a very clever way of getting around actually watching the documentaries and readings. The problem is, remember, the comment grade is only 20% of the course grade. 60% comes from the exams. And on the exams, you will be asked very specific questions about the readings and documentaries. Not so much that it should scare you, unless you haven't read it. If you haven't read it or watched it, these will be impossibly difficult questions. So, for example, the Leonardo DiCaprio film Before the Flood, I might talk about at one point he goes to Indonesia where he sees the great Indonesian rainforest being devastated. And I might ask, why is that forest being devastated? It's a very easy question because it's a very moving part of the film. You'll know it's to grow things like palm trees to produce palm oil. And if you've watched the documentary, that should have jumped out at you. And one of the 5 questions will be just that. But then I'll say some other ones like, to produce soybeans for cattle or to graze cattle and all. If you haven't watched it, you just have to guess, and you probably guessed wrong. By the way, a little aside about that, every time you buy a product that has oil in it, like a bag of potato chips or something, you should look on the back to see what kind of oil that is. It should be something, maybe grapeseed oil, corn oil, something. Should not be palm oil. Palm oil is coming from places like that. Indonesia has one of the second greatest rainforest on the planet. It is being cut down now to produce land to grow palm trees on. Back in 2014, the United States is huge by comparison to Indonesia and a huge polluter, the second largest greenhouse gas emitter on the planet. 2014, Indonesia had larger greenhouse gas emissions because of that. And it's all because people are growing palm oil there. And the sad thing is, if you buy a bag of potato chips for like $2 or something, the difference between palm oil, which is being used because it's dirt cheap, and responsibly produced oil like grapeseed oil is only going to be less than a penny on the bag of potato chips. So it's just really unfortunate. This is another example. Throughout the term, I will be making rants every now and again like that on things. So yeah, so back to that, don't use comments. Yeah, a little note here. People often come to me at the end of the term asking me to write a letter of recommendation. I'm really not in a position to do that because I would have to have read your work, get to know you personally, and it's just too large a class. So I'm sorry about that. Regarding your comments, what should they be like? I have from the True Cost documentary samples from past terms, sample 1, sample 2. You can go and look at these just to get an idea. Some people put more time in than others, and sample 3, so you can see. Okay, let me, by the way, whenever you're on this site, because it's probably the longest syllabus you're ever going to encounter, if you go down here, this little box with a chevron in it will scroll you back to the very top of it. But before I do that, while you all murmur among yourselves how long those comments were, and can he really be seriously wanting to do it? First comment around how long should the comments be? There you go. But seriously, the best way you can have to know how long the comments could be, to know what good comments are like, is to read what other people are doing. If you read other people and they're putting more time and thought into it, that should be a wake-up call for you. So Aisha will be, so people need to settle down because it's more technical stuff here. Aisha will be sending out information regarding the iClicker and how to link it and all. Many of you know how to do it already. If you reply to another comment, you have to write your own comment. No, you only have to do 2 comments a week, one on the documentary, one on the reading. One of those, they could both be replies, they could both be original comments, but you only have to make one. I don't know why you have 2 absences on iClicker. We haven't officially done iClicker goals. So in addition to the 12 comments, you need to reply to 20, you need to reply to 12. You don't have to reply to 12 more, just 20, 10 and 10. DSP will work out accommodation as to where you are. So what's the purpose of the honor section? The honor section is actually very helpful, maybe more to me than to the students in it in some ways, because I don't get to hear your feedback directly. I get to read it by way of your comments, but in a very interactive way, I get to hear what people think. But for people taking the honors section, the good thing about it is it gives you a chance to burrow into the material more thoroughly. And just to be clear about how the honors section works, this, like most classes, is a 4-credit course. The honors section meets once a week and is a 1-credit course. It is generally, I'm pretty sure it's just pass, no pass, and there's really no further written assignment or no further reading assignment. We just look at the material more thoroughly. All right, in the last few minutes, let me go over some other things you need to know. When you get to this website, it is the official website for English 23. It is the 2024. And this is for people who just stumbled on it, who aren't in the class, it explains it. A little confusing. This class is known as English 23 and Climate Crisis 101. The reason for that is I have the URL for climatecrisis101.com, and that's really what this course should be called, is Climate Crisis 101. That's not the way UCSB designates its courses. So both English 22 and 23 and 24 are both Climate Crisis 101. This is me, if you want to know a little about me. The main thing here is please call me Ken, not Professor Hiltner. And those are my pronouns. So to understand what this course is about, and this might not be what you want in a course on the climate crisis, because this is being approached from the position of the humanities and not the physical sciences. So people are talking and you need to like settle down, because I can see the two of you right there talking, and you're still talking and you don't realize it. Someone just turned around to see you talking. So you have a blue shirt with red sleeves and you're talking to someone next to you. Yes, you too. Stop talking. So this is what I meant about, if we see two people doing that during the exam, it's very obvious. I generally won't embarrass two people like that, but I might. So here's the thing. The climate crisis is being caused by a rise in atmospheric CO2 and other greenhouse gases. That's the scientific thought there. That's what it is. And if you approach this from a scientific point of view, you might say, well, what can we do about it? We need to find a way of reducing emissions. So we need, for example, a car that produces fewer emissions, and that's how you address the problem. This course doesn't approach it that way. This course says that, this is anthropogenic climate change. It's human caused. We need to look at the human activities that are causing it. We need not to look at coming up with the lower emission car. We need to look at the idea of driving itself. Why are people doing this? 25% of your greenhouse gas emissions, if you're an American US citizen, come from having a car. Quarter of your emissions come from it. You can reduce that to zero, not by getting a zero emission car, because I'll explain that doesn't do it at all, but using alternate means of getting around, using mass transit, using personal mobility options. And you might say, well, that's just impossible to do. You look at something like Copenhagen, for example, 63% of people in Copenhagen get around by biking or walking. 2/3 of people. And if you think, well, that doesn't really work like in the United States, well, we're here to tell you at UCSB it does. And I should note that I am the chair of the Transportation Committee. And I can tell you that 69%, more than Copenhagen, 69% of all undergraduates who get to campus either bike or walk here. And that's why we recently got a platinum rating for being a bicycle-friendly campus. We have 7 miles of bicycle trails and over 20,000 bicycle parking spots. The notion is, though, you have to stop thinking about doing everything the same exact way and instead look at the things we're doing. And if you read this, I go into more detail about that. So we're focused more on that. The interesting thing is, the solutions to the problem also often involve cultural changes. So if you looked at Project Drawdown, and we actually spend a week on this, what's the number one thing that we can do? So a big takeaway from the course, someone says, what's the number one thing that we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Should we put in more wind turbines, more solar panel installations, electric vehicles? That's all good. I'm not saying that's not good. But the number one thing that we can do is change the way that we eat. I mentioned it already. It will result in a staggering 167 gigatons. By comparison, if we shift it to electricity produced by photovoltaics, it would be half that amount. If we adopted electric cars exclusively, it would be less than 5% of that amount. Of course, we should do all that, but we really need to look at the kind of cultural changes necessary. And I note here how it works in the food waste, which I've talked about already. And I admit that talking about changing the way we eat and wasting less in food is not nearly, as I say here, as sexy as a sleek and shiny electric car, but it's 20 times better for the planet. The number two thing is also a cultural change, and that is we need to educate more girls and women, because the more education, I use girls and women sort of generically, but the person with the uterus, the more education the person in the uterus has, the fewer children they're likely to have. And in addition, we need to promote family planning and make it accessible to everyone. And because there are 85 million unattended pregnancies every year on the planet, 30 million of which result in births. So, and again, the responsibility doesn't fall on the person with the uterus, because obviously, it's everyone involved needs to take contraception simply. Important. Why is this the case? 60 years ago, in fact, when I was born, there were 3 billion people on the planet. There are now 8 billion. By 2050, not that far away, it's going to be pushing 10 billion. The planet cannot sustain this many people. So and the reason why this matters, the more education you give a person with the uterus, the fewer children that they have. So if you look at the highest birth rates in the world, people where for each person with the uterus, they have 6 children, also has the lowest educational level in the planet, which is 5th grade. If you look at the highest education levels of a person with the uterus, you'll find that it goes down dramatically, including in the United States. If you don't have a high school degree, you'll have 3 children. And if you have a college degree, you will have fewer than 2. But it is a complicated issue because people will often look to other parts of the world and say, well, it's other people in other parts of the world and they're having too many kids and all. They're the real problem. It is a ratio between the number of people and the amount of resources they're consuming. So if you look at the United States, and unfortunately we're one of the worst examples of this, our emissions are like 20 or more times other people on the planet. So you can say, well, those people have a much higher birth rate, but on the other hand, we're consuming resources and with commensurate emissions 20 times more. But in any event, if you look at these 2 cultural changes regarding food and population, they will take us nearly a quarter of where we need to go. And there are a whole range of other things, and this course is going to take those up. So if you get a chance, you might want to read through this. The only other thing I will tell you, it's not an online course. You have to come, no discussion sections. I put your TAs here, both places. Final thing I'll note, climate anxiety is a thing. People are experiencing it. You're experiencing it. We're going to address it in class. Sometimes it can be kind of tough, so I do want to give you the link here to UCSB's CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services. Okay,